Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. In today's video, we are going to be talking about using a rifle for your everyday carry. And before we get this video started, as always, there are a few different options for supporting everything I do here on the channel. Those options can be found down in the description below. One of those links down there will bring you to the Firearm Freedom merchandise store. I got some awesome t-shirt designs over there that I know you guys are going to love. This shirt that I'm sporting in today's video is one of those designs, and I seriously appreciate you guys repping the brand. If you want to make sure you're not missing out on this content here on YouTube, you can click the subscribe button, ring the bell, but more importantly, comment down below this video. That interaction should continue to make these videos pop up in your subscription feed. I have made the comment quite a few times now in other videos about EDCing a rifle, right? We're not just going to talk about rifles in this video. I'm also going to touch on pistol caliber carbines and shotguns as well as rifles, but just as a whole, long gun can kind of encompass everything that I'm talking about. It's incredible to me how many people in the comment section, primarily on Reddit, and it is Reddit, and the more that I use Reddit, the more that I understand the memes about Reddit, but of how many people out there gave me crap for EDCing a long gun. Not so much as in like, hey, you know, that is not possible, why would you do that? But more so in the way of like this anti-gun rhetoric of, why would you do such a thing? Why would you carry a rifle with you? Well, why would you ever need a rifle? You don't need a rifle. Or there was a lot of people doubting that anybody would ever EDC a rifle or a long gun. So I don't know, after all of those questions and comments and things, I thought, you know what, let me make an entire video just talking about why I EDC a long gun, when I do, when I don't. And quite frankly, this video could be stopped immediately by the person watching it with just this simple sentence, which is, it's situationally dependent. But I'm going to dig into exactly why and what some of my choices are for EDC long guns. Now, a lot of people kind of ask that question, hey, there's no way you EDC a long gun every day. There's just no way that you do. Well, my situation is very particular, and it's not a situation that most people have. For those of you that don't know, I work full-time, aside from my job here on YouTube, at a gun store. I am a manager at a gun store, and with working at a gun store, I have the very unique ability of being able to openly display the fact that I am carrying a rifle with me, loaded to work in my bag, kept separately away from all of the other items. It is not really looked at in any sort of bizarre way because I work in a store that sells firearms, and almost every other employee that I work with as co-workers also carries long guns with them to work, loaded as part of an everyday carry routine, just like a loaded handgun on their person. It is the exact same mindset. Now, working in the firearms industry makes that very easy to do. So I want to capitalize on my ability to do that. Of course, if you work in an office space or somewhere else that maybe would not take too kindly to firearms in general, let alone a loaded long gun with you on your day-to-day, that is going to be a lot more difficult. But a lot of people wonder how I can carry a long gun. That is how, and that is why I carry a long gun with me every day. I do fluctuate kind of my rotation of long guns depending on the kit that I have with me and the situation that may be there, or maybe I am doing something with that firearm that I need to have it with me more frequently, so therefore I am going to choose that gun. Maybe I'm switching something out on it, or I need to clean it at the shop or something like that, and that's why I have that gun with me versus something else. But when it comes to everyday carrying a long gun, that's the first thing you need to consider is, does your day-to-day life even allow something like that to happen? Now, a lot of the time, people will say immediately, well, hey man, you can't leave that in your car. I agree. I would never recommend keeping a long gun, or really any firearm for that matter, in your vehicle. That's just not something I can get behind personally. I like the ability that we have to do it. I just would never recommend to do it. I never keep a long gun or any other firearm in my car throughout the day when it's just sitting in the car all day. I think you are asking for that to be stolen at some point or another. It is so much easier for somebody to break into a vehicle and find a firearm in that vehicle than it is your home. So with that being said, if you carrying a long gun with you every day is going to essentially look like you having a truck gun and leaving the gun in the car because you cannot bring it into your place of work, I would recommend against EDCing a long gun entirely. The ability that I have to take the gun into my place of work is why I carry it every day. Now, aside from that, there are times throughout the day where I'm traveling home from work and I need to make a pit stop or an errand before I go home. And yes, my gun is left in the car for a small amount of time. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. At the moment, this Colt 6943 is my daily rider. Not in this exact configuration. I have the suppressor, which is a Silencer Co. Omega 300, riding separately in a pocket in the bag because I cannot fit the suppressor on the gun inside the bag. So the suppressor is just in the bag as an extra. And for home defense, I have a mag coupler with 2 magazines of just standard 55 grain ball ammunition. When it comes to EDCing this gun in the bag that this gun rides in, I can only fit a 20-round magazine in order to get it to properly close. So this usually has a 20-round magazine, and in my day-to-day, I do load 62 grain green tip for my EDC long gun if it is a rifle. Why is this? Well, primarily just for my personal preference. I don't even know if there's a right or wrong with this. It's situationally dependent. You are much more likely to run into glass, windshields, other barriers. That 62 grain green tip is going to do a better job penetrating over 55 grain. Now, when you bring it home, that's a little bit of a different story. Obviously, you don't want to have some 62 grain green tip in structures that you can have over-penetration, major over-penetration issues. So that's why I switch it out with some 55 grain. And I also don't want any sort of limitations in the house with only having a 20-round magazine. I like having the coupler on tap ready to go. But as far as the gun goes, it stays in the exact same configuration for the most part that you see it here in my day-to-day life. When it comes to an EDC long gun, if you've made the decision that you are going to do it, you also have to look at the legalities in your state. A lot of people are confused. You might know I live in Pennsylvania and they say, hey Joe, that's a rifle. How can you keep a rifle loaded in your vehicle? I'm not an attorney, but my understanding of Pennsylvania law is that you cannot have a loaded long gun in your car. However, what most people don't know is that an NFA item, a short-barreled rifle like this, actually falls under your Pennsylvania concealed carry permit. So I can keep this loaded and concealed on my person throughout my day-to-day life. I could not do this with a 16-inch rifle in the state of Pennsylvania, but I can do it with my 11.5-inch SBR here without any issue. This does a great job in that role, and it also fits that legal role in my state. That's something you do want to consider in the state that you're in. Something else to consider is the bag that you are carrying the firearm in. When I'm looking to EDC a long gun, I don't want a big, cumbersome bag with pockets and that weighs 50 pounds carting it throughout my day-to-day. Although that would be nice to have a ridiculous amount of gear on my person, it's just not practical throughout my day-to-day life. So I'm not going to give you guys all my secrets, but I do have a very small, non-firearm related bag that this fits perfectly into in the loaded configuration. I don't have to take it apart. I don't have to take the upper off the lower. It fits loaded, ready to go. The only thing that's different is the suppressor is not on it and it's in an outside pocket of the bag. I'd strongly recommend a nondescript bag in order to keep the firearm in if you want to keep it with you in your day-to-day life. It makes it a lot easier to carry around a firearm with you that is not immediately screaming, there is a gun in that bag. So I try to be as nondescript as possible, and most people would never have any idea that I have a super nice Colt SPR in the bag that I'm carrying this in. What else do I bring with me generally if I'm carrying a rifle on my person? This is something that I've had a really tough time trying to figure out the best option. Right now, what I carry with me is my invert bandolier. I've done a review before on this on my channel, and I'm a little bit indifferent about the bandolier, quite frankly. I think it has its positives, and I also think it has its negatives. But at this point, the reason why I'm carrying the bandolier with me in my bag is because I can really tightly fold this thing up so that it's nothing inside my backpack, which just generally has all of my other administrative stuff throughout the day, my lunch, extra pens, gum, whatever, and I'm able to just roll this up, put it in a pocket, forget I even have it. You'll notice it's very light. I have some extra reloads on here, and I have a tourniquet. All of my other medical gear is in my backpack, and I don't have that much sustainment in my kit. I have the ability to live rather close to where I work, and for that reason, I don't ever foresee myself in an immediate situation where I'm going days before I get home, and if that is the case, there's probably a lot more going wrong. So if I had to use this, it's very, very far into the what ifs, but if I had to, I think a few mags and a tourniquet is probably enough to get me the small amount of a drive I have back to my house and just have a little bit more on hand for whatever the situation may be. Now, I EDC my VP9 still, so I also have an extra VP9 magazine on here as well. I also have kind of fluctuated my EDC options and really tried to figure out what works best for me. The Colt so far has worked incredibly well for the fact of being able to bring it immediately home as my home defense rifle as well, which the Colt absolutely is. I have the suppressor in the home defense roll. Everything as you see it here is exactly how this gun sits. So the moment I bring it home, I get it out of the bag, I put the mag coupler in, I put the suppressor on, in the corner it goes, and there's my home defense gun as well. So this has been a great gun for that reason. Some other guns that I've tried in the past for EDC long guns ultimately end up just not really working well because I have other guns for defense, they're just not really, they're a little bit too heavy. I do fluctuate them still, but I've ran into issues, and I can briefly touch on what those issues are here now. One of my favorites for an EDC long gun for a while was my M92, this Yugo M92. This has the Midwest Industries side folding stock on it, super comfy, and I love the idea of this as an EDC long gun because of the abilities that 7.62x39 has out of a short barrel. Again, you're outside, you're driving, there's a much higher probability that you may run into a situation with glass or other barriers. 7.62x39 is going to do a very good job getting past that and still having pretty devastating ballistics downrange out of a short barrel. I also love the ability that I could fold this stock and get this thing so freaking compact and have so much firepower. I ultimately stopped carrying this as my EDC because of the weight. 7.62x39 is not light, and carrying just a few extra magazines started to get to the point where I was breaching the barrier of palatable comfort throughout my day-to-day life. I was not going to push it into the realm of just being completely unnecessary with weight to just simply go to work. At times, when I was running late or whatever, now I'm lugging like 30 pounds of extra gun and ammo and kit, and it's quite a situation. So as much as I love this gun as an EDC roll, I just could not realistically do the weight throughout my day-to-day life. I also messed around with using my CZ Scorpion as my EDC gun, and this actually worked really well, primarily for the reason that with the stock folded in half, it freaking fit about in my backpack without issues. I didn't even need an additional bag. So that was really cool, but ultimately I really started to battle with myself on the whys behind a pistol caliber carbine. I have my VP9, I have a pretty ridiculous amount of extra ammunition on my person throughout my day-to-day for that VP9, which is 9mm, and for maybe about 2 inches extra on barrel and a few more points of contact, I just really could not justify carrying with me an entirely new gun for just some more points of contact and the exact same caliber. Again, I like PCCs for certain roles, but for an EDC gun, I really didn't see it as a viable choice. It just was something that I was carrying a lot of extra weight, and I'm like, why? It's the same caliber. It's not really giving me any additional benefits in velocities downrange or penetration or terminal ballistics or anything like that. So ultimately, that's why I stopped carrying my CZ Scorpion in an EDC role. One of the last options that I have as an EDC long gun is my Remington 1187 SBS. Phenomenal gun, and this is actually one that I still do EDC quite frequently. There's a few reasons why. The additional ammunition for a shotgun on my HRT shotgun placard is ridiculously easy to carry on my person. It sits incredibly flat. I have about 21 extra rounds on that placard that just slides perfectly into my backpack. I can put additional pieces, danglers, and other things on that placard and not even know they're there, and that is why I love having this as an EDC option. Also, double-aught buckshot gets through most situations pretty well, and I do have slugs rotated in on that kit as well for anything past, let's say, 25 yards, again, getting way down the what-if rabbit hole. Now, when it comes to this, the limitations that I started seeing with the 1187 is its length. That has been a very big problem. All of these other guns that you've seen, I can fit in this very tiny nondescript bag. It's a bag that is a, let's say, sports-related bag and not anything to do with the firearms world, and all of these guns, again, fit perfectly. This, however, does not. So whenever I EDC this gun, it is a little bit of a challenge to try to figure out what bag I'm going to use, and ultimately I end up having to use a firearms bag in order to carry it, and I really don't like that. I don't like having to stop for an errand and having a firearms bag in the back of the car. I think you're just asking for it, especially when it comes to having an NFA item in the car on top of all that. Also, the light situation here makes it very difficult to squeeze into most bags, so that's also been a little bit of a problem. So although this does frequently go in my EDC rotation, and I absolutely love it, I have no complaints. I'm also very confident with this shotgun and my abilities with it. I do feel that I carry it less and less frequently just because of the bag and trying to find one that works. Now, if I found a bag or something else that would carry this with ease, I would carry it a lot more frequently and rotate it in with my Colt. Finally, I want to talk about the whys. You've heard me use the what if rabbit hole a lot here in this video. A lot of people are watching this whole thing and kind of still scratching their heads around the fact of why in the world would this guy need a rifle in an EDC role. It really comes down to you not knowing the situation. Now, let's be fair and realistic. An everyday situation is incredibly rare to have to use a firearm to begin with. Even more so, if that situation arises, it's probably going to be maybe even just drawing your handgun and not even using it. And if shots are fired, it's probably going to be a very few amount of shots that are actually fired. And that's just the reality of the situation. But our world is constantly changing these days. And more I see situations developing around the world where I would feel a lot more comfortable if I unfortunately was in that situation if I had a rifle nearby. A handgun is an incredibly limited tool when it comes to an SHTF situation or a situation involving a tyrannical force that is trying to do something to you. It is a lot harder to use a handgun to get out of that situation than it is a rifle. And for that reason, and the abilities that I have to carry a rifle with me in my day-to-day life, I am absolutely going to do so. It is a little bit more of the prepper mindset than it is the standard self-defense mindset, but it is also the mindset that I have of just seeing an authoritarian force that's out there in our lives today. You never know the situation that's going to develop, and if you have the ability to carry a rifle with you, I don't see why you would not carry a rifle with you in your day-to-day life. There's many other people out there that are not going to have that ability, and there's nothing wrong with not carrying a rifle with you. It's a very rare chance that you would ever have to use a long gun. But for the people that are on the opposite side of that aisle that have the ability to carry a long gun, I would encourage you to do so, and I would encourage you to get good with that long gun and understand how to use it and have training behind it. That really could make or break the situation and getting out of it still breathing and alive on the other side. Guys, if you have any other questions about this topic or anything else on the channel, please throw them down below in the comment section, and I absolutely will get back to you. While you're down there, head up to the description, check out those links to support the channel, and as always, stay tuned for more great videos coming soon.